MyMichelleLive Podcast.
My Michelle Live.
Hey, thanks for joining in the fun. Welcome to our entertainment review, where we take on, well, of course, entertainment in the most entertaining fashion, right? And the most entertaining news and the most entertaining people. I connected with our first guest today at a broadcasting convention. There was a get-together hosted by someone that can change your perspective on Hollywood. You think Hollywood's jaded, Hollywood just has, they're all in it for me. And then you have Jen Getz, who is the star of the
Jen
Farmer.
Gotson.
Forgive me. Jen Gotson, who is the star of Farmer and the Belle, and she is the most beautiful soul on the planet. And then I met another man who is a beautiful, gorgeous soul, and he's the writer of that film. He's a He is a musician, I found out from his webpage, and what a blessing to get to know you. Bob says, thank you for joining us.
Hi. All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Your journey, I wanted to talk a little bit about your journey as a screenwriter. You have an ability to make a story come alive in a real way, in a way that's relatable, in a way that brings levels. There's an art to screenwriting. There's an art to painting. And you have that.
It's more of a craft than it is an art. I think it can be an art after the film is made.
Okay.
But it's a real craft. It's something you have to study and something you have to learn and something you have to work on as a writer, because it's probably the single hardest writing discipline to do, because you can only write what can be seen and heard. You can't write anybody's thoughts or intentions or anything like that that you can when you write prose, when you write a novel. So you're limited in the scope of what you can write. Right now I'm adapting a million-selling novel for one of the streamers, and I have to take a 350-page book and filled with intentions and thoughts of the characters, and turn it into a 110-page script.
Wow. Good luck with that. But as they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So you can say so much. But what I see in a good screenwriter like you is painting beyond what. So taking that picture that paints 1,000 words, but it also seems to paint a lot of emotions, a lot of underlining things that are going on. And that's what I mean by the layers of the craft.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And there are layers. You do actually look for those layers, and you do actually build those layers as you write any kind of movie that you want. Getting a movie made is a miracle. Okay. Getting any movie made is a miracle. Getting a good movie made is the second miracle. So good movies are two miracle movies. And so so when you try and craft a good script, you do try, and you're good. I'm glad you recognize that, because a lot of people don't. And that you do layer things in the movie that are going to bring out emotions and bring out feelings from the audience.
You say people don't notice it, and yes, that may be true, but I think they sense it. I think when you're not watching, you're watching an overly simplistic movie, or you're watching a movie that it doesn't line up with reality. There's something missing. It's like life. There's something missing if you don't have a depth, if you don't have real love, if you're just walking around just existing.
It's I think part of it is that it's the movies that strive to bring emotion or bring feelings out to you instead of using the story to bring those feelings out. That they're looking to do that rather than to use the storytelling to evoke those things in an audience. A lot of screenwriters, when they first get started or when they're trying to learn the craft, have to learn the fact that when you write a book, it's first person or third person. It's either I did this or he did this, that's the point of view. But when you're a screenwriter, your point of view is the audience. And if you don't take that into account, how is the audience going to react to this? Is the audience going to believe this character is doing this based on what their perception of the character already is? Is the audience going to feel empathy or anger, or are they going to laugh based on what these characters are doing and why they're doing them? And you have to have that in mind all the time as you write a story for the screen. And there's a lot of filmmakers that still don't understand that it's not their point of view that's important, it's the audience's point of view.
And something else that I've appreciated in good screenwriting, and I see it in you, is taking that story and welcoming the audience's imagination. I think that any filmmaker has a hard time competing with the imagination. No matter how big your budget, you can't beat what I can imagine in my head. And I would say that you have the ability to go beyond what we're going on screen. And this brings that depth. And I'm going to get to why that's so important right now in just a moment. But when you bring that depth, not only what I see on the screen, but what I can imagine in my head, then you've employed something that a big budget can't, right?
No, it's true. And the fact is that you have to do all those things as a writer. You have to do all those things while thinking about what the budget is, because when you're working with producers, they have a finite amount of money of what they can spend on a film, and there's only 6 places that can buy a big budget film. 6, that's it. And 3 of them aren't buying anything right now. Disney and Fox Fox owns Disney, or Disney owns Fox, but and Warner Brothers, they're not buying any scripts now. So there are very few places to get a big budget film. So if you want to be a screenwriter and you want to break into the business, you have to write $1 million to $5 million budgeted scripts in order to get attention from the producers that can afford to make those kinds of movies. So yeah, you have to be able to write those kinds of stories that evoke those kinds of things and layer them and do all those things, and still keep in mind that you've only got a finite amount of money. That these producers only have a finite amount of money to make them.
And I think is glorious about that is it has to breed innovation. You're a musician, and in music, you talk about there's 6 places that you can get big budget films, or those 6 music writers in the world that 85-90% of the new music that's out there. There's not a lot of innovation. I mean, back in the day, I have to do this with playing I have to bring this in. I say Bob's a musician, and a musician he is. Can I just play a little snippet of music that you've done?
Yes.
Do you mind? Yeah, this is Yes, indeed. So this is what I'm talking about. Back in the day when music was made.
That band is a band that I was in for over 10 years called the B-Sides. And what we basically played street fairs and auto shows and big venues. We played all 60s rock and roll.
There you go. When there was a lot of innovation, when people
Yes.
would do weird, wonky, cool things with instruments and in the recording studio. And now everything's modulated and compressed. You don't have the differing sounds, and that's unfortunate. I would say even to a degree in movies that we see a lot of the same thing. Everybody's making hero movies and superhero movies.
And everybody's going to see them. And when they stop
that's
going
true.
to see them, they'll stop making them. And that's the thing, that there's an audience for those superhero movies. There's an audience for those Marvel
And
movies.
that's fine. I love them. I do love a good superhero movie. I'm a little geeky that way. All right.
And that's great. I'm glad you love them. One of my very best friends is an executive at Marvel.
Oh, let him know. Marvel's got it right to a degree, and that's more of where there's layers in reality. Marvel, as opposed to what we've seen in the DC fail, I would say the biggest, and maybe not an epic fail, but Marvel
Close.
gets it right because they bring layers of reality. Wonder Woman, there's no faults to her. You can't relate to her. But Thor, God of Thunder, he gets it wrong sometimes. We've seen him with the dad bod. It's relatable, and that's where that innovation comes in. As you were saying, maybe not the 6 major big budget films, but out there people are hungering for something different.
Absolutely.
And would you say that the big 6 are a little trepidatious in trying something new rather than going with the proven?
They're scared to death to try anything new because they don't want to commit to something if it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, their failures are mammoth. Look at Disney and A Wrinkle in Time. Okay, one of my favorite books ever. I read it to my children. It's just a brilliant, wonderful book. And they took it and they destroyed it. It wasn't even the book that I read to my kids. And they thought this is going to be a hit. And it wasn't. It was a titanic failure. And instead of learning, maybe we should look at the why books sell as much as they do and try and stick to what the book said. They took it as we shouldn't be making anything new. We should go back to making Lion King 7. And it's a problem, but it's not a problem. What is interesting is that the innovators now are a lot of the streamers and the HBO and to some extent Amazon and some of the other. I give a lot of credit to PureFlix for starting to spreading their wings out now. With their association with Sony now, they're starting to spread their wings and doing and there's some really interesting things coming from them in the future. And it's exciting and it's cool. And so writers like me and other writers that I know have stopped looking at the studios and started thinking, this is how I can innovate and do things by doing things with producers that are working with the streamers.
Yeah, and you mentioned PureFlix. The good thing about
I'm writing something for them right now.
Oh, we're going to talk about that in a minute. The great thing about PureFlix to me, you cannot write about something, as you mentioned, that you don't know. You can't get the depths of reality. Now, when Hollywood tries to do Noah and they have giant rock monsters, then you're like, I don't remember that in the Bible. They don't get fake films.
Because they don't have if you're writing a Christian-based story, and not story, Christian-based, biblical, because I believe the Bible is true. If you're writing Christian biblical things and you don't come from a Christian base, you're going to put rock monsters in it because you don't, it's not what you, it doesn't come from what you your beliefs and your what your faith. But so that's what's going to happen. But if you, did you see Church People?
No, I didn't see Church People.
Yeah, I wrote Church People.
I'm sorry. I have yet to see Church People, but I hear good things about it. I hear that
it's something that Thor Ramsey, and who's a Christian comedian,
yes,
and Stephen Baldwin put together, and Stephen's a good friend, and Thor wrote a script and I did the rewrite on it, and it's a funny movie, and it's a straight out Christian comedy. And I think part of what's happening in that world now is that there's a spreading out of that too, and that there's going to be more innovation in Christian filmmaking. The Skit Guys have their new movie coming out, Family Camp, and it looks great.
That looks funny too.
Yes.
And because you get it. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to play the trailer to Church People because that's all I've gotten to see. But from the trailer, I was like, okay, he gets it. Because if you ever been in church, y'all, you've gone to church with one of these people. I'm just saying. And it's funny. I'll let you look at the trailer, and then we'll talk a little bit about
Okay.
If we broke attendance records, I'd get the church logo tattooed on my arm.
Skip, remember back when we first started? All we did was preach the gospel.
Ooh, Superman works. I like Superman. Guy, what do you think?
What happened to you?
Me? Your dad is the one with the gimmicks.
The power of the Holy Spirit propels us.
I just want the church to get back to the gospel. Problem is, you're trying to get your message across. The gospel? And ain't nobody listening to that.
For Good Friday and Easter, I need something big. Amen?
Bigger than the resurrection.
Bigger than anything we've ever done. National headlines.
Preach on the death and resurrection of Jesus.
Bam! An actual crucifixion.
Uh-oh.
By placing the nails through your palms in the right place, we hope to avoid major nerve damage.
Operation Stop Skip is a go. That's awesome.
You have to cancel this Good Friday stunt.
Don't be so dramatic, honey. Ooh, I like the rusty ones.
Yeah, having some fun with Church People and trends that we can all relate to, but making it relate.
It's about a mega church that's lost its way, where the presentation becomes more important than the message, and about getting back to that. And the ending scenes are pretty powerful about getting back to the message, but getting there is pretty. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to make a movie that wasn't faith-based, but faith-adjacent. And the difference between the two are faith-based preaches to the choir, and that people love them and they go to them, and that's great. And I think that's fine. But I like faith-adjacent movies because they can bring in people who are not believers because they're interesting or funny or have a good story, and they can't, like Farmer and the Belle.
Yeah.
Farmer and the Belle is a perfect example of a faith-adjacent film. And what they are is they can bring people in to watch them that aren't believers. And as they're leaving, there's that seed of, what is that? And it's the salt that it talks about in the Bible.
It is like this show. My Michelle Live, our podcast, look for the God story. If there's a God out there, what's he doing in all this? And what does he ask of us? Is there something we can see?
There is a God out there. And,
yes, there is. And that's why we find it every episode. But it's not about preaching to the choir. It's about getting out there, asking the questions, talking about real life, because all of us have that God-shaped hole in us, and we all ask those questions. So
Hey,
let's see.
thank you for saying that, because I believe that completely. I believe that the God-shaped hole thing. I do. I believe it completely.
Yeah, and we all ask those questions from time to time. So where do you
Sure.
go for answers? And if you are looking for answers and you go somewhere that speaks a language you don't understand, you're not going to get answers. So sometimes you have to reach people where they're at.
I work in the secular film world. I've written movies for Hallmark. I've written movies. The extracurricular activities behind me is a very dark comedy thriller that came out 2 years ago. It was in the theaters. I've written all kinds of movies. Not just faith-based movies, or not just faith-adjacent movies, but I've written all kinds of things for Lifetime and for some of the streamers. And I get people who do come to me and say, "How can you be a Christian and write for secular films?" And my answer is always, "What do you do for a living?"
If you're not a preacher or a choir director, you might want to rethink that question, honey.
Are solid, but I'm a screenwriter. That's my job, and it's just like, if there's a person who's a plumber doesn't say, "What do you believe?" before they come and fix your water heater.
I only fix water heaters at churches, so I'm sorry.
I get where you're coming from, and I applaud it. I think it's really kind of evangelism, and I think in its own way, and I applaud that.
You mentioned Farmer and the Belle, and boy, what a film that is. It is indicative of a new passion in recent years, and that's the Hallmark-esque films. I was in Podunkville, Iowa. I apologize to Iowa. Every state has their own Podunkville, all right? I was there for some political thing, covering it for media, and there is nothing to do but eat really good food. They got good food in Iowa, and watch television, and that's where I first came across one of the films that you wrote, Help for the Holidays.
Here comes somebody else.
Oh, that's interesting. Hello, Karen. Can I check in with you in about 5 minutes? All right. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yes, that's just my day today. That's the way my
Don't
days...
worry about it. It's not that big a deal.
I appreciate you. There we go.
Stuff happens.
Stuff does. Farmer and the Belle. I watched Help for the Holidays. I love the writing on that.
That's one of my personal favorite movies that I've written.
In fact, it was probably the most beloved of the 2012 Hallmark films that came out that year. And
Yes.
I think it's one of the reasons why Hallmark has gone over the top. I mean, and no one everyone's trying to make Hallmark movies, but they're just not often the same. They're missing something. What is it?
Oh, I don't think that. I think Lifetime is. I did a movie for Lifetime last year called the Christmas Yule Blog, and it's a good movie, and it's got a lot of great things to say. And they allowed me to put some faith stuff in it, more than Hallmark has allowed me.
That's
to put
great.
faith stuff.
That's really good. And see, there's others. I'm not dissing others because they're doing
Hallmark
their own thing.
started this whole thing, and it was such a huge success that other people are. Netflix wants Christmas movies, and Amazon wants Christmas movies, and Hulu wants Christmas movies, and they do. And there's a new. And I did a movie last year for GAC Family, which is some of the people that used to run Hallmark.
Yeah.
And it's called A Christmas Star.
Okay.
And it's on Amazon Prime now, and it was it was a great experience to do that with them.
There's
And
something
again,
wholesome
they allowed
and
me
fun.
to do some faith-based stuff in it.
Wholesome, fun. It lifts these lift your spirit. And our
Yes.
final minute together here, I want to play part of the trailer of Farmer and the Belle.
It starts with a little boy,
I just want the Christmas spirit back in my family.
a little wish,
I have an emergency that needs some personal attention.
and a
That
little
is not
help
Farmer and the
Christine.
Belle,
She's
but
here
this
for the
is
to
yet
remind us of
Help
the
for the
magic of
Holidays.
Christmas.
Thank you so much.
Eva LaRue in one of the 12 new movies of Christmas. Help for the Holidays.
Yeah, that's a great one. So I'm glad I played the trailer for that because you'll want to see that one as well. But I hear there's a part 2 coming out, a sequel to Farmer and the Belle. Let's look at this.
The movie.
That's an actual movie. Boy, it's one of those days today. That's okay. So Farmer and the Belle's Finding Santa Land, a real fun film. Has some great acting in it.
Jen Gotzon had a vision. Jen Gotzon had a vision for this movie. Jen's vision was that little girls get bombarded with the message that physical beauty is more important than internal beauty, and understanding yourself as a human being and being satisfied with who you are inside. And her vision was to tell a funny, interesting story, but to still instill that message in it. And it was a real labor of love for me to be able to take that, what she wanted, and build it into the kind of story that she envisioned. And it's been a massive success.
It's a romp and it's fun, and I mentioned the Hallmark movies because it's everything Hallmark does and more, and it was so well done. A lot of us have looked at films that are either faith films or, as you mentioned, faith adjacent films, and going, okay, what can I expect? This is, you have to watch it, and it's now a family favorite for ours
I'm so
during the
glad you came
holidays.
back
So we'll
to
look at
Santa and Miss
the
You.
real
Is that the
trailer.
bracelet your grandma gave you? Yep, it's got sayings on it.
True beauty is here.
So, what do you want to be when you grow up? My mother says I could be a fashion model, but maybe I could be a farmer too. You're beautiful, Belle. Bye, Belle. Don't forget to write. Pen pals forever.
Connect with the horse.
Did you find anything else for me?
Nature's beauty. Adult diapers.
Oh, this is
When I wrote the adult diaper thing, Jen called me and said, and just howled with laughter. She said, "Oh my goodness." I said, "Yeah, we have to get her into a position where she's just at the bottom of where she thinks that she's at the bottom of where she can go, so we can lift her back up, but lift her back up in the right way." And it was, again, that film, and Jen and her husband Jim, who produced it, are just magnificent human beings.
Yeah, you can't find people who are more beautiful in and out than
No,
Jen
Jen and
Gotzon.
I have been friends.
So
Truthfully, we've known each other for 25 plus years. And she is a unique, funny, interesting, talented human being, and I am a better person for knowing her.
and you are as well. I sat down with you at National Religious Broadcasting Convention, and I just thought, this is someone I cannot wait to connect with. You are an absolute delight, and I'm
Well,
so
let's
glad
do
I
this
got to
again
meet you.
sometime.
I would love to do that. Thank you. Real quickly before I let you go, what's up in the future for our friend Bob? What are you writing?
I'm a Farmer and the Belle 2 is up in the future, I'm pretty sure of. It's not written in stone yet, but it's pretty close. And that's great because there's millions of Farmer in the Bell fans out there. So I'm very happy about that. And I'm adapting a book for PureFlix right now that I'm not quite ready to talk about yet because they haven't announced it yet. And I want to give that, they need to have that ability to announce it rather than me.
And then we'll talk about it, right?
But people are going to be pretty excited about this one. This is going to be pretty great. I will tell you, it's a 6-book series. And I'm doing the first book. And hopefully I'll get to do the rest of them. It's pretty cool. And then Stephen Baldwin and I think are going to do another movie.
That would be great. I have nothing but respect for that man. Bob says, thank you very much for joining me today. It has been a lot of fun. You are such a blessing to me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Do I get to hawk my book?
Hawk your book. Hawk it all the way.
If you want to be a screenwriter.
Yes.
I have written a book called That's Not the Way It Works, a no-nonsense guide to the craft and business of screenwriting. It's a very popular book. It's on Amazon. It's in Barnes & Noble. It's everywhere you want to have books. It is the only book on the market that not only tells you about the ins and outs and nuts and bolts of how to write a script, but it's the only book on the market that tells you what to do after you've written the script.
Thank you very much. And as you said, we have a big open market now. Things are changing and people want something new. That's where that book will come in handy. We'll put a link on MyMichelleLive. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks. I appreciate it. And Michelle, what a pleasure to be with you. You are delightful. And to be honest with you, I do a lot of these interviews and I got questions from you I've never gotten from anybody else, which tells me that I'd like to do this again.
Bless your heart. I would be so blessed. Thank you. That was a lot of fun. As we continue with our entertainment review today, I'm joined by my friend, Paul Asay. We don't always get to connect, but when we do, it's so much fun. You are such a blessing, my friend. Thank you.
I'm so happy to be here. I love coming on this show. I love it.
Me too. I love it. We're going to be talking movies, entertainment today. Before we get to movies, though, there's a few little entertainment news stories that I wanted to bring out. This is cool if you follow American Idol at all. Have you seen this guy?
No, I have not.
So this kid is from Luke Bryan. He is from American Idol, but he's a Liberty University student. This is what he sounds like.
And the flames went higher.
What?
And it burns, the ring of fire.
That is literally his voice. Are you freaking kidding me? It's just amazing. Seriously. Ring of Fire. Yeah, there you go. It's an amazing voice, but as a student of a Christian university, moving on in American Idol, he says he wants to give all glory to God. And I'm sorry, it's Luke Taylor is his name. Just an amazing voice. It's cool because you keep hearing, it's as though Christians don't exist or people of faith don't exist. But they keep popping up all over the place. Listen to this kid.
Now the preacher's been drinking, but it's hard.
I just think he's a precious soul, so it's going to be fun. In the entertainment realm, interestingly enough, just to give you a little more insight, another Liberty University story popped up in the entertainment world, really in the sports realm. Liberty has a sponsored car and they have a driver. This is a Christian university, William Bryan, and he says, hey, yeah, I'm pretty proud to represent them. So I thought those were some real fun news stories from the entertainment realm. Something else, Paul, though, before we get to movies, as we were talking about this kid and he's like the new Josh Turner or something. This is Billie Eilish, she's on a tour. She's going to be in my neck of the woods. You do a review there at Plugged In on her music. You do music. You do YouTube videos. You do books, games, movies. I love this, and I just wanted this, my final news story before we get into the movies. She's doing this tour. This is the picture. And her tour is happier than ever. If you are listening, if that is what happier than ever looks like we like to say on My Michelle Live, check your worldview, sweetheart. Oh,
it's a tough world out there. Sometimes you just shoot for what you can.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. So I'm introspective as ever. Maybe that would have been a better name for the tour. Yeah. I'm not so sure. But now that we've gotten some news out of the way, let's talk movies. What's out this week that we can look forward to or at least talk about?
It's a slow week, actually, at the movies. I think people are still taking a big, deep breath from Batman. They're getting geared up for the Morbius movie that's coming up pretty soon. This week we have, it actually feels like a throwback. And I'm not sure if you remember the film Romancing the Stone.
Yes, I do.
Way back in the 1980s. We have a movie that feels a lot like that. It's called The Lost City. It stars Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum. It's the Sandra Bullock character, Loretta. She is actually a romance writer who is done with romance. She's just done with it. So she is not going to write any more books, she says. She doesn't have any romance left in her soul. Her husband died. So she's just finished. But she's got this one last book tour to do, which I'm sure you'll be very familiar with soon. It is one of those tours that she doesn't want to do. She has to do these appearances with her cover model. Channing Tatum plays Alan, who has been the cover model on all of her romances. And it seems that on most of the stops of the tour, most people come to see Alan, who they call Dash, because that's the character in her book, more than they want to see Loretta. She is done with that as well. But then this fan comes up, really wants to talk with her, and wants to talk with her so bad that she is kidnapped and swept off to this admittedly very pretty island. And the fan wants her to help him find a hidden treasure that she mentioned in one of her.
Is it a gem that's shaped El Corazon? No.
If only. No, it is called the Crown of Fire. The Crown of Fire. So the fan thinks it has something to do with rubies or whatever. And so he's very excited about finding this because, of course, on this island, there's a volcano that is about to. So they have to discover this treasure before the volcano explodes. Loretta says that she really doesn't want to help him, but the fan insists on pain of death. The only person who can rescue Loretta is apparently her cover model. Alan swoops to the rescue, trying to be all Fabio, and tries to rescue Loretta. And that's where the story picks up. It is an interesting movie. It feels light. It's romantic. It's funny. Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum have nice chemistry. And it feels like this should have been a cleaner movie. It feels like there was a clean, nice PG-13 family-friendly movie that was trying to come out. But because some of the dialogue gets a little bit tawdry, because we do see Channing Tatum's backside covered with leeches, because of a really crazy scene of violence, which feels more suitable for an R-rated movie, this was much harsher than it really needed to be.
Okay, so keep that in mind for families, but for adults, it sounds like it might be a fun romp.
It is a fun romp if you can deal with the sexual innuendos, the double entendres. it gets pretty crass. So it really depends on, I'd say, the couple. It can be a fun date night. I'd probably feel a little bit uncomfortable taking my wife to see it, and not just because of Channing Tatum's rear, which, that could be troubling, but there could be, some other issues that might be involved as well. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think Sandra Bullock and Tatum is having, you say the chemistry. They are both seem like really cool people. They just do. I know it's all Hollywood and it's all acting, but they just seem like cool people. And so you can imagine that chemistry would be interesting. It does sound like Romancing the Stone meets Joe versus the volcano or something. But,
that's good.
And as we were just talking with Bob Says, a screenwriter, he mentioned that there's 6 major filmmaking companies that have these big budgets, and they are not really keen on doing something new. They're not keen on trying something new. They've got to somehow regurgitate something that's already worked because there's a lot of money on the line. So this might be a good compromise in that. It is a story that we've seen before. It's been done, but we have a new twist at least. They're not calling it the same thing. They're putting some new twists and turns, and we've talked about it a lot. Let's watch the trailer.
What is this? Taken? Am I tooken? Alan?
I'm here to save you.
Ow! She has the key to finding the lost treasure. After them! I am driving.
What is that?
Just pick it and fling it.
Pick it and fling it. Don't make that sound. Getting you out of here.
Why are you so handsome?
My dad was a weatherman.
The Lost City, March 25th.
It does look fun. I'm not going to lie. It does look a little bit fun.
And Brad Pitt, he is a fun character in this. And yeah, you have, they do seem like really likable people, don't they? Channing Tatum got his start in Magic Mike, which from a plugged in point of view definitely has its issues.
You think?
But he has been in some fun movies. I just saw him in Dog, which is a really fairly interesting movie. It's sweet. It's funny.
Don't forget about this movie with the dog, people. As you're going, it's a slow week. If you haven't seen it, it's charming.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. It has, again, some issues for families, to be sure. But I think it does show his ability to be a comic actor. Neither he nor Sandra Bullock take themselves very seriously. And I think that's always gratifying to see on screen because these people, they're Hollywood types. They're beautiful people. So when they are willing to make fun of themselves, I think it makes it
relatable.
It makes for a funner movie.
It sure does. I like that. So we'll see how that goes. And yes, you can see the movie with the dog. That might be well worth a scene. And didn't Channing Tatum disappear for a little while off of the Hollywood scene altogether and just say, I'm done with movies, and now he's making this nice reappearance? I do not recall whether he vanished for a time. He seems like I know he's older than this, but he seems like he's like 25. So he can't have had a long career. The thing about him, honestly, and I always worry a little bit as we do interviews like this, it seems like he has 2 first names, right? Sometimes I think, is it Channing Tatum? Is it Tatum Channing? Sometimes I get them a little mixed up. Yeah, I do that too. I think I've probably done that in this interview. Awkward moment. That guy. At any rate, if we ever meet face to face, I'll be embarrassed then. Anything else that's out there as we look at movies that we might want to check out this weekend? You're looking right now, if you're watching this at MyMichelleLive or any of our outlets, a plugged in page where you can see movies that are currently out. You can see movies that are streaming, and you can even do a little search for movies from days gone by.
Days gone by. Yes, we have literally thousands upon thousands of movie reviews, for sure. The other one that is out this week that might be of interest to some people, it is rated R. But The Infinite Storm stars Naomi Watts. It's essentially a survival movie about this woman who does a little hike. She does this hike quite frequently. It's her form of therapy to get up into the mountains, but a storm hits. And as she realizes, I really need to get down before I die, she hears this call in the distance. And there's a guy sitting on a ledge with just a light jacket and shorts and sneakers. And she realizes that if she doesn't rescue this guy, he is going to die up there. So it becomes sort of the story of their trip down the mountain. It's really fascinating in some ways. It's definitely a survival pick, but there's more going on to it. And it's too bad that they just had a little bit of language here, because otherwise it could have landed in PG-13 territory, I think, without the language.
Well, hello, there you go. I had not heard of that film, to be honest, until I looked up on the Plugged In site, which, by the way, is a pretty good resource if you're going, okay, what should we watch this week? And it can give you a little bit of insight. Infinite Storm, there is an anime movie that's on your Jujutsu Kaisen, whatever. Yeah, there's that. I'm just saying.
It's always interesting. This is a movie that landed without any fanfare. Oftentimes, it's an anime movie, and these anime properties have hugely rabid fan bases. They're much larger than you would think. In some ways, I compare them to the Christian movie world. Not a lot of people would necessarily have heard of The Chosen if they're not Christian, but people who are in the know that it's a really good show. And it's the same thing with a lot of these anime properties. This is not something that most people will have heard of, but people who know Jujutsu Kaisen will really
he just rolls off his tongue like Channing Tatum. Channing. Yeah, it rolls off his tongue.
Yeah. Oh man, it's hard when you're saying. I'm glad that I spend most of my time just writing, because at least I can see how to spell it. You know,
you don't have to be an apology. You're just trying to make me feel better, but it's okay. It's part of my charm. Let's finish up on the jiu-jitsu thing. Worth a see. Is it good for families? Anime is a mixed bag.
Anime is a mixed bag, and you're going to find some violence in this for sure. The nice thing about this particular movie, it is based on, it's a prequel to a long-running television series. Fans of the series will be able to hop right in and understand what's going on. But this is one of those rare anime movies that doesn't require necessarily you to do a lot of research to figure out what to do with this. It is essentially, it involves these high school kids who are dealing with curses, living curses. The main protagonist for the movie, he is actually cursed himself. He has a 10-year-old girl who, back when they were both kids, swore that they were going to be together forever. Immediately, the 10-year-old girl died, and she decides to keep her promise by melding with him. And she's very protective. And so anytime someone seems to threaten this guy, she kills them. So that tells you we have some spiritual issues going on that you're going to need to juggle through. You're going to have some violence and some gory moments to deal with. It is all animated. So for some that helps. For me, it does not, actually. I find that animated gore can be almost more troubling than the live action gore that we see.
Yeah, we normalize it for kids. So now, and you can get more of a long review at pluggedin.com. You can find the link at MyMichelleLive. Finally, I got the chance to see this film, Turning Red. It's Pixar. Everyone loves Pixar. Pixar always seems to just knock it out of the park, or at least get a nice solid double. This was the first Pixar film that I just didn't want to watch. Now, it's not saying that I didn't try. Sat down, we turned it on. Oh, okay, Turning Red, it's Pixar. It's Pixar. Come on. Even the worst Pixar is better than most things out there, right? And there's a lot of folks who love Turning Red, but I could not make it through. Sorry. 5 minutes. It was literally 5 minutes. I was like, yeah, it did not capture me. It didn't make me go, oh, I want to see more of this. It had no hook. It was the lead character, this little girl, was obnoxious, shrill, annoying. And I know that may be in the story that can come into play, but I just couldn't take it. And from reading more of the story, as I understand it, she doesn't get much better. In fact, there are some family elements I'm going to have you weigh in on. But I have a theory that we talk about on this show, Paul, that you can have disturbing nature, even violence and problematic situations, things that are disturbing or hurtful, depressing even. Those can happen in films. They happen in life. But in order for it to be a winner in my book, I want to see the redemptive message outweigh what we're seeing on film that's disturbing. And I don't know that comes into play. Let's talk about Turning Red from your point of view.
Yeah, I would have to say I did watch the whole thing because I was reviewing it. And I found it to be disappointing. Not a horrible movie by any means. I think that it was fun in places. But as you say, Michelle, we're used to bigger things from Pixar. Pixar has been behind some of my very favorite movies over the last 10, 15 years. Up, I thought, was brilliant. Inside Out was beautiful. It is always tried to reach for deeper meaning, deeper purpose, lessons, and it wraps it all up in these beautiful, emotionally resonant packages. Turning Red felt like a kid's movie, and it felt like it took an easy way out. Pixar movies have dealt with grief. They've dealt with some really unsexy topics, really, like duty and sacrifice and all this sort of stuff that you have to deal with as adults. And this one was more, be true to yourself. You're going to have to push back against your parents and rebel. You have these elements that I think were disappointing because they didn't go deeper. The main character, she is just turning 13. She is going through a great many changes in her life, as many people going through adolescence do. But one of her changes is that she turns into a giant panda. And
I hate it when that happens.
And
as I've
through
said,
this, she finds that she's clashing with her mother more often. We've seen this from Pixar before. I think in some ways, I always go back to the movie Brave, which had the same theme. You had this girl and her mother that were clashing between independence. And it was a great movie. It's actually for Pixar movies, it's one of the lesser thought of ones. But I thought it dealt with the very same messages that Turning Red does in a much more profound...
Exactly. In fact, Merida, the main character in Brave, is a better Disney princess than Disney has put out. I just love that film, and I love the family dynamics, the importance of parents and parental guidance, and even the parents growing up a bit in that film and appreciating, but that kind of coming together, that's not what I'm getting from Turning Red. No,
it really isn't. I have compared it to Brave. I've also compared it to a Disney movie called Encanto, which I really enjoyed.
Okay. Yeah.
That also deals with a lot of family dynamics. And both of these movies deal with the pressure that families can sometimes put on us. And as we grow up, as we try to push into who we are outside of our moms and dads, What does that look like? Those tensions are things that everybody goes through. But while Encanto did it all within the context of the family, Turning Red, it felt like to me, did it all within the context of the main character, May. She was going to do what she wanted. And the movie ends on that note. Like, this 13-year-old girl is going to do what she wants, and the mom better get used to it. And when you think about all the trouble that 13-year-olds can get into these days, and the idea that 13-year-olds do not necessarily have the best decision-making capabilities, it felt disappointing. Again, it wasn't a horrible movie, I didn't think.
I get it, but it is disappointing. And this is a trend. We can let kids choose their sex when they're 5 years old. And at 5 years old, you may have a daughter that, identifies as a dinosaur. So it's the imagination. I think it's at the very least irresponsible. They aren't taking a real live person and a real live 13-year-old that can make decisions for themselves. And then I know what's best. And then following that through and find out what really happens in their life. It can be perfectly fine. They can find their own way and do something spectacular, good for you. But more often than not, there's going to be a lot more pain than success. So again, it goes back to the redemption factor. I'll use a film that I did, Redeeming Love. Now, Redeeming Love had disturbing and even some sexual situations that could be problematic for families. The problems in that film, or the disturbing issues in that film, way outweighed by the redemption factor. So it makes that film work. Yeah. There's real life balance.
I think that Redeeming Love is a great example because it does have a really strong message, a very biblical message. It does have a lot of content, and that's something that I think a lot of Christian families might not expect, but it's inherent really with the story that they're trying to tell. And I agree with you. I think that when you have, I would even go back to Batman, the latest Batman movie, which I know you've talked with Adam about, but you look at Batman, the latest movie that has come out, it's grim, it's dark. You see some really very gritty elements, and in some ways it can feel R-rated. And yet, because of the character of Batman, because of the redemptive arc that I think that the movie takes at the end, where Batman realizes that he needs to do more than just beat people up, it makes the movie more resonant. It makes it more powerful, and it makes the darkness in some ways more understandable, because the darkness helps illuminate the light that we see in the character.
And there you go. And I liken that to a book that you've written. I like to bring up when we have conversations that has little to do with movies, but a lot to do with depression, which has become a greater epidemic than the coronavirus could ever have hoped to be in our situation. When you realize and you walk through this book with you with such humor, who writes a humorous book on depression? Paul Asay. When you walk through this and walk through your very honest journey, the darkness brings so much more light to and highlight. It makes the light just seem all the brighter. Beauty and the Browns is a phenomenal book, and I know it's a sidestep from entertainment, but all the entertainment in the world cannot distract you from the despair and the hopelessness that you might be battling with inside. There is hope for that. This is a man who's walked through it. You see this humorous, happy, wonderful face, but there's a struggle that my friend Paul has gone through, and he shares it so beautifully in Beauty and the Browns. You should pick up that book. Absolutely.
That's very nice of you, Michelle. Thank you so much. And I think that's, to bring it back to movies, that's one of the things that movies at their best can do really well. They take dark situations and they help you see that there is light to be found in them. And those are the movies often that I really appreciate.
And that's where you check your worldview and where we're going to wrap things up, because your worldview, when you have a worldview that follows through with that and says, really, there's darkness and there's light. What's the ultimate light? And what is that ultimate hope? It's the God story. And that's what we like to talk about on My Michelle Live. Do not forget, please, to like, share, comment. And if there's folks in your world that need a little connection with the God story, well, tune them into
For more
our
fun,
show.
go to MyMichelleLive.com.